We return to the Book of Rites, Book 3, Forsaken Lands, in the words of Molten Milithe, the Wild Witch. Just know that wild witches refer to themselves in the plural, very much like Persephone from Sacrifice, so do not worry about that overmuch. Years upon long years we spent distilling life essence from many things, which all once writhed under the auspices of their mortality, which we ourselves cut short. In this, we have no regrets, but we learned much, and so we think, did they. We earned the title Witch, and were forced to flee into the downside here. We encountered Muir, and soon we gained an understanding of each other. He bade us circumnavigate these lands and catalog our findings. We felt a strong desire to expose the secrets of this land. He wished to yield benefit to those who followed in our wake. Indulge us both then. Downside Prairie. The downside is connected to our realm via a single artery, the river named for our prestigious Sep colleague, Luce Glorian. That river gushes into seeming nothingness. That seeming nothingness turns out, of course, to be the downside. Its existence undermines thousands of years of thought about the composition of our world. The downside southern edge we call the Sandfolds. It is a desecrated wasteland, speaking well to this land's lack of hospitality. Here, the strength of many who survived the river journey finally fails. If only they could clamber further north, where lies the verdant downside prairie. A better place to perish, to be sure. So it appears the river was named after Sklorian, not the other way around. I am intrigued in the Book of Lu. Muir Valley. The downside prairie first appears serene, is not. The soil there accommodates only the region's brutish native vines and overbrush. The most likely food source proved poisonous. Thus, we journeyed further north. The climate there grew fouler to my senses, though the Kurja Muir found it amenable. This sprawling valley, pocked with long-evaporated lakes, gives evidence to the monstrosities which roam this land. We found the region's western edge to be more pleasant on the whole. Therein we found sources of fresh water, whereas over to the east we found the edge of the land's most hideous decay. Flagging Hands. Beyond the valley lies the Flagging Hands, which could be called a swamp if an entire sea could merely be a lake. Soon after our arrival, several of us fell into a dark despair. Such were the environs. I found it rather fascinating, though it held aspects reminiscent of the southern bogs we dwelt in as a tad. We grew accustomed to the dampness of the air, and grew to savor certain twigs and beetles. It can be said the Flagging Hands are an acquired taste, recommendable only for those of our same bent, or perhaps the downside's native imps. The sea surrounded the environs on three sides, appearing insurmountable at first. The Sea of Solace. Beyond a shallow, sickly gulf, our voyage grew increasingly forbidding, and much harder to explain. How could a sea exist here at the bottom of the world? We could not deduce whence sprang the carcasses of ancient sailing ships we found through the Sea of Solace, though the warnings that they signified were duly noted. It was here we first met Ores, called the Underking, who brazenly assaulted our small skiff, for we had trespassed in his waters. But then the Underking relented, for he witnessed Muir in all his doom and glory. Soon he would side with us. Then with the Underking, we sailed forth into a tempest beyond reasoning or measure. The Deathless Tempest. We waited for the Deathless Tempest to subside. We waited. But the Underking, he merely laughed and laughed, for the Deathless Tempest does not subside. What lies beneath that stretch of sea to cause such an upheaval is best left to myth and speculation. We made passage, nonetheless, through sorceress aid and good fortune, scarce seeing the surrounding environs. We did detect a landform to the west. Muir detected where the presence of the treacherous aid who lured him into exile and then followed him in turn. Muir, in his wisdom, thought it best to be avoided. At last did we arrive on distant lands, though seeing them provided little comfort. The Black Basin. The continent we called Black Basin shall one day tear itself apart, arriving upon blackened, molten crags, tolerable only by the harp Triesta. We pressed onward toward a suffocating wood. This land felt to us somehow primordial. Deep in its roots and noxious crevasses lay innumerable clues as to its ancient history, but we had little time to excavate, for our supplies by then were very thin. Further, we were lost. Our best attempts at circumnavigation all had failed. It was loose Glorian who reached out at last unto the stars, and they revealed the way. Then we at last could see the sacred Mount Alodia, there in the distance. Mount Alodia. Gaining the summit of sacred Mount Alodia involved no small amount of sacrifice and sorcery in varying proportion. The mountain's energies are palpable, the sensations that we felt indescribable. The lands we stood upon were closer to the stars than to the world we had known. It was upon this highest point in all the downside that we first made efforts to concoct this tome which you now read. It was there that we were stricken with a vision of the cycle of the Rites, and felt together, for the first, a sense of freedom unlike any we had experienced before. But that is a subject which our comrade shall illuminate in greater detail. And that is the Book of Milithe.